introduce the seven by alphabetical order by their last name. So it has nothing to do with who comes first other than that. So here we go. So Linda McBride Alcorn, born in Los Angeles, went to school, high school there at Marlboro School for Girls. UCLA has a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, was the first woman engineer at Wet Enterprises, now WDI, in January of '79. Part of the opening day show control team and installation teams for Epcot, Disney MGM Studios, Animal Kingdom, and Euro Disneyland. She also built the show control team down in Florida, where she is now resident. And Linda, I didn't pop you before, but I'm going to pop you now. Probably having card games on your computer is probably not the best thing to show how diligent you are.
It was lunchtime.
I can see that. There you go. Okay, Ray Braun, economic feasibility. Ray was born in Orange, California, grew up in Tustin, went to Claremont McKenna College, has a BA in economics, also an MBA from UCLA. He founded Entertainment and Culture Advisors in 2010, ECA, headed the entertainment practice at ERA, Economic Research Associates, for over 20 years. He was the first consultant hired by Lego to plan the entrance of Lego into the theme park industry, and Kidzania, the first consultant there, to strategize their global rollout. He's a founding member of the Entertainment Council for ULI, Urban Land Institute, and he's also authored a couple of books for them. Tracy Eck, art directions, design, and show quality. Show quality is about the people who keep the place looking, the attractions looking as beautiful the day 20 and year 20 is day one. So it's really an unsung hero in my book. So Tracy was born in Chicago, Illinois. She studied French at Wisconsin University in Madison. She studied theater at University of Michigan. Key member of the lighting team for Disneyland Paris in 1992 when it opened. As I said, she is responsible for maintaining the art direction and the creative vision at the Disneyland park there in Paris. She infuses new magic and color into iconic attractions such as It's a Small World. And she's a member of the core team there for Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris, and has been 29 years working in Europe. So she is a transplant and calls us from there she is not having coffee. Of course, she's having a glass of wine instead. So well done to you. So Roberta Perry, business development and public relations. Roberta was born in Tacoma, Washington, has a master's of public address and rhetoric, Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois. She has served on many a panel or association, international president of the Nightclub and Bar Association in 1992 and 93. International president of the Themed Entertainment Association from 94 to 96. Has received TEA awards for the James Cameron's Titanic experience. And her clients range from technology companies such as iWork, Sega, and Edwards Technology to studios such as Fox, Paramount, Universal, et cetera, et cetera. And I like the fact that in addition to that, also the US Navy. So well done there. Onward from there, Jim Scheidel, architecture. So Jim was born in Hollywood, California. Whoop, there we go. Sorry, Jim. So in Hollywood, California, educated at University of Oregon with a Bachelor of Architecture. He built the Cunningham Group to one of the most respected architectural firms in the leisure and entertainment industry, led the Cunningham Group in delivering several groundbreaking and iconic attractions such as Back to the Future, Waterworld, Soaring over California. Under his direction, Jim's team has won 16 TEA awards. Jim was honored by receiving the Walt Disney Company Strategic Partner Award on behalf of Cunningham, and he established the Themed Entertainment Sustainability Summit TESS, which has been in the US, Beijing, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. Bonnie Sinclair, costume design. Bonnie was born in Brooklyn, and she says once a New Yorker, always a New Yorker. So she was, however, educated in California at Cal State Long Beach. She taught costume and history design while getting her MA. She worked on Captain EO, and with that, that started a 5+ year career with film and television with Michael Jackson and other wonderful projects. She received an Emmy for her work with Bob Mackie and Peter sorry, my morning's not working very well for me. And for production of the Academy Award. Lived in Japan for Puroland, doing costumes there, modernized the Radio City Music Hall, production, costume, and wardrobe department, and she has her own business, The Costume Connection. Our last master, and certainly not least, is Lonnie Smoot. Lanny was born in Brooklyn, New York, and he now is resident in California. He has 2 degrees from Columbia University, a master's and a bachelor's of science and electrical engineering. Lanny has 96 US patents, my goodness gracious, and many more internationally. He started his career with Bell Labs. He designed the first mass-produced fiber optic system and first video on demand streaming systems. And I believe because of his good technology and good thoughts, we are here together today using that technology. So he's now with Disney, where he has worked on numerous interactive systems to immerse guests in life-size virtual entertainment and brings new technology to old standards such as Madame Leota, and has developed things such as the first-person lightsaber battle systems. So with that, congratulations to you all. So with that, today's session is going to be in 4 sessions, and at the end of each session, we are going to try and do a question or 2. Lisa Passamani's Green is going to thankfully catch those questions via chat. So please ask away as we go through each session. We're going to try and really get the learnings and perspective from the masters over the arc of their career. And basically the 4 sessions are really talking about our industry, the growth, the culture, the learnings, and what is the future. So with that, let us begin. So the industry. You have all worked in the industry, some of you for, well, all of you for decades, and some of you in our industry solely, and some of you have transplanted into our industry. So I thought really it'd be interesting to get a little perspective on that, and I'll start with Ray. So Ray, you know, when I think of the industry, I think of it really with Epcot and TDL. That's of course where I started, Tokyo Disneyland, a few short years ago. Obviously the industry is over 100 years old with IAPA, and Disneyland 65 years old. But what was the industry really like in the 80s and prior to that?
Well, John, I like to take issue with you. And I still peg the beginning of the industry to the opening of Disneyland in 1955, not least because my mentor, Buzz Price, helped Walt Disney plan Disneyland. And so that was the start of my business too, you know, the economics of the themed entertainment industry. So that's where I think it begins. and there's a lot of development that's happened since, but the beginning was with Disney, and then the development of the regional parks in the United States, the Six Flags parks, the parks that have been put together to create Cedar Fair, and many others. So I think the regional park industry was equally important.
So that's good for Jim. Let's move on to Jim with that. So, you know, again, as I say, there were the two mega parks in the early 80s, which is Disney, you know, Epcot and Tokyo. So Jim, how did these new wave of parks really start to absorb that learning in the early 80s? And how did it roll across the world?
What I saw in the 80s in Korea, as well as in Hong Kong and also mainland China, was that the theme parks there began to implement some of the successful guest experiences they had seen in at parks such as Disney, Universal Studios, as well as SeaWorld parks. And they were bringing guest experiences to their domestic audience that could not travel to the US to experience those. It was really a very valuable thing for them to do. And for instance, Lotte World in Seoul created their own version of Pirates of the Caribbean, their own version of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and they even had their own Disney castle. We also saw Lotte World, as well as Everland and then OCT and Mainland, creating kind of environments celebrating various cultures around the world, similar to what had been done at Epcot. And in the late 80s, everybody wanted a version of Back to the Future. So it's interesting how the US entertainment industry did and still does have a significant impact on the foreign theme park experience. And they take things that we've done here, things that have been developed here, and implemented them to their best ability in their own countries and their own culture. So,
well, thank you for that. You know, it's interesting when you think about rolling out these entertainment ideas across the world. Roberta, you've worked on multiple different platforms and multiple different arenas.
Yeah, it's true.
How does it roll across that arena and all those various avenues that you work in?
Well, John, thanks for that question. I learned from the very first day of the TEA that we all love to socialize. And because of that, it became a tradition, again, almost from the first day, that when any of us were going out to any association or a conference, whether it was the museums, zoos, aquariums, nightclub and bar, restaurant, ICSC, World Gaming, we would find out from each other who was going. And then we'd get together, we'd go to a local bar, and we'd socialize. And we would do it for three reasons. First, of course, to increase the business for our own companies, but more importantly, for a lot of us to get to know each other, which was so important, and to expand the membership of the TEA. And I love that that tradition has continued across the entire planet. No matter where we are, we will get together at a local bar and socialize. Great tradition.
Thank you for that. So, Lisa, are there any chat questions that we should address?
Yes, so far we have one from Lisa Shanley from Technomedia, and she's on the TA Western Board. Having been through a few different incidences, downturns, economic dips, and other tough times in the industry, what are the thoughts of this panel on the state of the industry now and advice for how to stay the course?
Oh, that's a really good question. And Lisa, you read my mind, because that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So I think, why don't we continue, and hopefully we're going to answer your question as we move through this process. So thank you for that. Great setup. Any other questions? Shall we just roll along?
No, that's it right now.
We're going to roll along. Okay, everybody, ask your questions at the next round. Here we go. So let's talk about our industry some more, and really about how it matured and what's the whoops, I went too far. So, well, something's wrong with my computer. How's that? I'm just going to ask these questions. Here we go. So, Look at that. Okay, so here we go. Right. So when we think about the industry in the multiple ways that it has matured, right? You know, when we started, there was no school there for themed entertainment. And when we think about how we all got together and did this, it was basically we all came from other walks of life, right? We were either theater people or film or construction. We all kind of got jammed together. So with that, Linda, let's talk a little bit about your background and experience where you started at Wet Enterprises in the early or late 70s rather. So 40 years ago, what was the atmosphere like back then?
It was much smaller and slower. All the technology that we take advantage of now simply didn't exist then. It's hard to imagine a world where there wasn't an internet. Nobody had personal computers on their desks. Cell phones were years away. And it was just slower. And for me, I actually didn't come from industry. I came straight out of college. And because it was slower, it made it easier for me to learn on the job. Another thing I think that was very different was that your home life really was your home life. There wasn't really a possibility to do what we take for granted now. You know, when you left work, you really did leave work, and there was no cell phone in the car when you were driving back and forth. It was actually your time alone. So very, very different world.
I can imagine, right? No Zoom in your living room, right? Okay, so let's move over to Tracy. So Tracy, you're now in France. You're bilingual, you're bicultural. You grew up in Chicago, you studied in Strasbourg. So how has that affected your thinking about the industry?
Well, John, I would say that being bilingual, bicultural it really widened my understanding of the world and my appreciation of the big global possibilities out there. And, you know, I think what you learn, and it's so valuable, is that every culture has its strengths and you really play to those. And when you're putting a team together, it's really exciting when you have people from all different cultures and everybody has their own way of thinking and it all kind of works. And, you know, some people pick some things up and others pick other things up. So I think what you learn to do is share best practices and listen and understand what each culture has to offer. And when we were building the first park, you know, it was wild. It was, you'd go into Fantasyland and it was Italian, and then the Germans were in Discoveryland. And, you know, all of that was sort of this big melting pot. The Irish were on Main Street, and, you know, you had to figure out who you could disturb during lunch and who you didn't mess with their lunchtime. And, you know, all of that stuff, it's part of what's really fun and interesting about working with different cultures.
So when we think about the maturing of our industry, I know some that's near and dear to them is, and Linda, you touched on it a little bit about family and splitting family life from work life. But, you know, over that period of time, what was it like to raise families with double working families, or Ray, in your case, where you had triplets? So little perspective on that. Tracy, you want to open that up?
Sure. I had my first child on the first park, and, you know, it was pretty challenging. And when we built the second park, the studio park, it was interesting because Paula, who I think is on this call, was leading the team, the lighting team I was part of, and Laura was a single mother. She was there, and, you know, we helped each other out, and that really, we supported each other. Somebody had a sick kid, well, you just fill in for them. They would work from home, and so that helping and sharing workload when you needed to is really the way to go. And I think the other, I've been lucky because my husband and I are real partners. And I think what I've observed is the fathers are ever more involved. And when the fathers get involved, then it's better for everyone, because then it's not just the mother's problem to
Right.
work that out and manage it.
So Ray, is that true with triplets?
Well, triplets was a real balancing act. But yeah, just to represent the working fathers as well here, it was a real challenge. In our business, the consulting business required a lot of travel. And, so I think it was for 6 months before and a year or two after, I had to have all my colleagues do all of the travel, and I stayed home to be near and support my wife, who was the real pro in the raising of children business. But I did my best.
Linda, I know you have strong feelings on that.
Well, things have changed a lot since I entered the workforce, because back in the late 70s, if you had a child, basically the expectation was that the woman was going to quit and become a full-time mother, and that was really the norm. So if you're a professional, I worked 12 years before I had my child. And I really kind of felt like I had to do that in order to prove myself. And then when my daughter was 6 months old, I took her, and I unfortunately had to leave my husband here in Florida, but I took her with me to Paris. And probably one of the more boneheaded things I ever did, but I felt like I had to prove myself.
So let's move on a little bit from there. Let's move on to strength comes from diversity of experiences. When we think of our knowledge and where it all comes from, it's really bringing us all together. Lanny, let's start with you. You were at Bell Labs for 4 decades, same as our industry in the 80s, Question mark. So, and how is it compared to your corporate environment today?
Well, actually, I wasn't at Bell for 4 decades. I actually have 2 careers. The first 20 years of my career were spent at Bell Labs and Bell Communications Research and Telcordia, all of the folks working on telecommunications. The last 20 years of my life were spent in the themed entertainment industry. So I bridged both worlds. And I'll tell you, the difference, I think, between the two in terms of culture are that at Bell Labs and the early telecommunications company, everyone is an engineer. My boss was an engineer. His boss was an engineer, and it was it in those days, which is hopefully changing rapidly. And the president of the company was also an engineer. And as a result, it was easy to communicate ideas because we were so focused on the same sorts of problems. Now, they used to call us sometimes people with bell-shaped heads because we all thought alike. Now, when I moved to the themed industry, I found that people were more diverse in their thinking. You had the creative types, the technical types. In fact, I was insulted at first when I was told I wasn't creative. I said, wait a minute, I've got at that point about 60, 70 patents. Are you kidding? I'm not creative? No, we mean you can't draw. Okay, we mean that you don't design theatrical setups and that sort of thing. And I learned that working with people that think differently, that think more, yes, creatively, artistically, and tempering that with sometimes what is the possible with the physics and the electronics, both make a wonderful blend. And I want to be an advertiser for the fact that there are technical positions in the themed entertainment industry. I feel like I'm the odd person on the team. I'm a person of color, and I am very happy. I sometimes feel I have to represent all people of color. That's both a burden for a person of color, but also an honor, I would think. It's a difficult job. But going back, the blend of different people and the way they think differently enrich our world and enrich the themed entertainment environment. And that has changed as we have gone forward, and I'm very happy for that.
That's wonderful. I like that. So let's move on to Bonnie and talk about, Bonnie, you've worked in television, theater, and themed entertainment as well. What's happened in all those associated industry, and how have they culturally shifted, as Lanny was just talking about a moment ago?
Well, in each industry, I kind of bounced between all of them at the same time, but technology was quickly evolving. It would have been great in the early days in the 80s to have had a cell phone with a camera with some of my film and television work. But I really think it's not about what was different in the various genre within the industry that's inspired me. It's mostly what's been the same. And essentially, they're all part of the same culture of entertainment, and working in entertainment is working within a culture of teamwork and collaboration. I really love the synergy of being part of a team when we are all sharing our diverse knowledge, creating something magical. It doesn't matter what kind of venue the magic eventually happens in, such as on a film screen, on a television, or in a theme park. It's just still magic. Of course, I gained a lot of inside knowledge of each industry for my work. But in essence, a theme park is still a big theatrical experience for the guests. And that's, so it just all added to the enrichment of my experience in each
Thank
one.
you. Yeah, it's true. It's immersive entertainment. That's what I call it. So
Right.
Immersive theater. All right, Lisa, how are we doing on questions?
You're good. Lots of great comments right now going through, and I'm saving the chat as we go so all the masters can see it later. But no additional questions yet.
So I think we should go to Lisa's question, and I think it's start to unfold. So Lisa, thank you for the setup on that. All right, we're going to the next two sessions are going to be a little bit more open in discussion. And I'm going to try and orchestrate this. So masters, raise your hand if you want to take on a question. So we're shifting to really the question of tools and knowledge, and how do you pass that on to others? What have you learned, and how do you take that learning and pass it to the next generation? From your careers and your experience and the maturing of your talents, you've all become masters that you're being recognized for. So how do we do that? So the first question is, how have you been able to absorb, grow, and become the talent that you are today? Anybody want to field that one? Lanny?
I started at a super young age. I didn't have visible role models as engineers. I just learned that Bonnie was born in Brooklyn. I was born also in Brooklyn, and and in a neighborhood that didn't have the role models that I might have wanted to follow. So I fell in love with some of the characters on Star Trek, especially Uhura. I think there was a good reason for that, both technical and otherwise. But also the character Barney on the old Mission Impossible show, who were, in my opinion, the people I wanted to be like: technical, capable, and always learning. And my father was an itinerant inventor, a person who had only gotten a high school diploma, but built many of the things that were my toys as a kid. There's a picture of me riding a unicycle, and my dad and I made our first unicycle using the front wheel of a tricycle hammered into a pipe with a bicycle seat on top. So try riding that, and I learned on that. So I think it starts early with the things that we love. I love to create my own toys, my own science fair projects, did all of that sort of thing. And curiosity always drove me. It drives me today. I can conceive of something in my mind, and I can't wait to see it in the real world. And it forces me to do it. So for me, you know, this type of thing is very normal. And I would encourage people who want to be good technologists or good at anything, do it a lot. Whatever you enjoy doing, do it a lot. And if you're lucky, you'll be able to make a living doing it. And if you're not, you'll still be happy. It's better to get paid though.
Yeah. True. So I'm going to move it on to the next question. I love that. You know, let's swing the pendulum. Ray, I'm going to pick on you for this next one. Okay. So, you know, we go from the inventor to the guy with the spreadsheets. How do you think out of the box?
Well, you use the word collaborating within teams. This industry is really about collaborating. And I've been part of many projects of trying to help conceptualize new types of attractions, new types of products for our industry, and working with those creative teams and creative clients it's very stimulating. There's a term we use for certain of these work sessions called charrette, which Buzz Price used to love to use that term, but it means getting together for a work session, a creative work session where no idea is a bad idea, and put everything up on the wall and see what survives to help shape a project. And that's as I said, a very stimulating time, and you come up with new ideas, new concepts, new products, and apply them to new geographies. That's exciting.
So Jim, I bet you do a lot of charrettes in your business, I can imagine. So, the next question I was going to ask is really about how you pass on your knowledge, but put that against the backdrop of the charrette process. Lisa, what do you got? Lisa, you're waving your hands around.
I am waving my hand because this question and the one you brought up tie together. So the question is from Mindy Wilson at WDI. Did you have a champion who helped you on your path to success? And have you become a champion to others to help the next 2 generations? So I think it ties into the question you're asking.
Yeah, thank you. So Jim, you want to weave that all together into your view of it?
Well, I can weave it into kind of the mentorship process and how to pass along my knowledge to the next generation. And I actually started that inadvertently about 10 years ago, but the reason it wasn't at the time to find someone to replace me, but it's so that I could find individuals to manage the day-to-day projects domestically, so I could expand Cunningham's horizon, both internationally in Europe, then in Korea, then in Hong Kong, ultimately mainland China, and most recently in Russia. I started the process by identifying individuals who really had a passion for our business and for creating built environments that would support the stories that you're all trying to tell and support the overall guest experience. And while it was important that these individuals understood the complexities of what we do in supporting these highly complex entertainment projects, and believe me, these projects are far more complicated than any traditional capital A architectural project. What was really important is that they understood the culture of industry and they could build good relationships, because the backbone of our industry, from my experience, the past 34 years has been in those relationships. That's how things get done. That's how projects get built. So it's really important that those are the individuals were identified. From there, it was just a matter of giving them more and more responsibility on a regular basis, mentoring them as necessary, starting to put them forward more and more, and me stepping back more and more. One of the things I really had to learn, however, was that this next generation, just because it did something differently than me, didn't mean it was wrong. In some ways, it was maybe better. And it was like I was learning, it was kind of, they were mentoring me at the same time. So during this last year, as I decided to retire, and for those of you who don't know it, after practicing architecture for 45 years and 34 years in this industry, I decided it's time to retire. And I began really transitioning my higher level relationships to the next generation. My goal has ultimately been to work myself out of a job. And I believe I've done, I think we should all think about doing that as we get further into our career. And I think I've done a pretty good job, and the next generation, at least at Cunningham Group, are ready to take things over. And for that matter, I think they already have. And I'm really excited about the next generation. And the main point of what I'm trying to do in my career is that for our industry to continue to thrive, my generation needs to begin to hand the ball off to the next generation and let them run with it. And we've got to be ready to do that. So
I loved your comment. Tracy, I'll come to you in a second. I loved your comment. I just want to pick up, it's about people. So those of you who know Orlando Ferrante, I used to go to Orlando quite a bit. And when I was doing in Shanghai, working on Shanghai, I'd go have lunch with Orlando about once a quarter, and I'd bring whatever the challenge of the day was to him. And he always ended at the end of it, after answering the question, he'd always end of it, well, you know, John, if you get the right people together and just let them do what they need to do and empower them, you'll be just fine, right?
Mhm.
It's all about people, you know, that's at the end of the day, it's all about people. Tracy.
I just, for the next generation, there are a few things that I think really are good to know. And so the first one is curiosity. Curiosity really, really helps you evolve as you're working. And you should just, whatever you're interested in, just sort of, follow that path a little, see where that takes you. And I think that some of the people who have mentored me and been the most important to me are a little bit unlikely. I was sort of following a path and stumbled upon something, and then someone became very important in my development, and I changed directions. So I think you really you sort of go down a path and see where it takes you. Passion, I think Lanny talked about that as well. If something is passionate, it doesn't matter if it's practical or if somebody's done it before, or if you feel comfortable. If you're interested in something, try it. And I got an undergraduate degree in French, and everybody kept saying to me, what are you going to do with that degree? Oh, you're going to be a French teacher. It's like, why would I ever be? I have no desire to be a French teacher. What are you going to do with that? And I would say, oh, I don't know. And then I discovered theater, and it all sort of came together. So, and then collaboration, which Jim, you're talking about, and John also, I do think that's absolutely a key. And if you do theater, any of those who are in the impractical business of theater, it's the best place to learn how to collaborate. You have to work together quickly, get something out in a short time. In the theme park business, it's the same.
Yeah.
But, to your point, John, actually, you sometimes get to pick the people you work with, but you don't always. You pick some of the people on your team, but a lot of times you have to work with people that you never would have picked.
It's true. It's true.
And
Yeah.
you have to make that work and figure out how, okay, I want to get to point B, and how do I make that work with this person who I don't have much of an affinity for, perhaps, but you still figure out how to make that work.
So Bonnie, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think that you should always think outside of the box. And I'd like to say that you should never be intimidated about sharing your ideas. You should always feel that that's important, that your ideas are valid and important. So always try to push the envelope and share, and the collaboration is a very important piece.
So let me move it on. And so Lisa Shanley, we thank you because you stole the thunder from our questions, right? So how do you get through times of crisis? And what are the tools that you bring, and how do you use your tools to go through that process? Linda.
Well, I don't know if you remember this, John, or not, but many years ago, all of WDI went to see Stephen Covey and was trained in some of his concepts. And for those of you who've gone through that, you'll know that basically one of his tenets is that there's spheres of influence and spheres of concern. And spheres of concern are giant things that you don't have any personal control over, like the pandemic. But spheres of influence are things that you do have control over within that context. So for example, for us, we can all do the best we can to make sure that we and our families stay safe. And if everybody did that, I think we'd be in a better position. So I think it's particularly applicable to the pandemic right now because it's so easy to get overwhelmed, but we really do have control over a lot of things.
So before we move on to the next session, Lisa, we got any questions?
Yes. Yes, we do. We have a few. So from Luke Bayrand at WDI, he would like to hear some suggestions and advice from the masters for people in the early stages of their career in terms of getting and generating their first projects.
Getting and generating. Roberta,
Yes.
I throw that one over to you. Getting is the key word that I locked in on.
Yes, getting that first job. Everything we've been talking about, I absolutely agree with. And there is one tool that we all need to sharpen, and that's the tool of networking. In order to get your first job, you need to be networked out there. You need to know people. The TEA is a great place. If you don't know the people, the members of the TEA, reach out to them. Don't be afraid. I mentor a lot of next gen, and sometimes they're so afraid to just talk to people, to get out and say, hi, my name is. We cannot ever forget the value of networking. Marty Sklar taught me that a long time ago, because I will never forget the first time he called me and said, Roberta, we don't know each other well, but I know that you know everyone. And I thought, wow, for Marty Sklar to say that, he said, we're going to be releasing some people into the world, and I'd like to give them your name and have you help them network to the other jobs. So it's not only your first job, it's networking into your next jobs. I know I've done that 100 times, it feels like. Also, I look at every industry, what opportunities there are out there. I'm amazed every day at the number of jobs that are coming through. If you can't find a job right now in your own industry, as I tell some of my mentees, look into other industries.
Right.
There's so much out there, and just don't be afraid to say, hi, my name is,
Right.
and talk.
Go ahead, Lisa.
So we have 4 more questions, and these are for everyone right now. The first one is from Eve Benyetta. And now I never know whether to say Disneyland Paris or Tracy. We have that whole debate about how to say where. But he wants to know, do you agree that imagination is more important than knowledge?
Imagination. Ooh, I'm going to give that to Lanny. Lanny.
Okay. I think
Yeah,
knowledge is the base, but imagination is the thing that propels it. They're both, they're both important. You can learn things in school. You have knowledge. You have life knowledge. But you can imagine an unlimited number of ideas, and with some effort, you can bring them into reality. So if I had to choose, I think I'd rather have an imaginative person rather than a person with fixed knowledge. And the reason is the imaginative person will continue to increase knowledge. They will go out and find the answers that are preventing them from getting to a place. They'll go and learn that. So they can learn it at any time in their lives. But if a person doesn't have imagination, they shut down ideas. They stop things.
Really well.
Ray pointed out that, as a financial guy, he was also a person that was an enabler, right? I suspect, I haven't known Ray that long, but I have a feeling he would say, I'll find the money for a good idea, right? I will find the money for a good idea. I won't find the money for nothing, for something that isn't exciting. So imagination, I think, is the most important thing.
Well said.
Lanny,
Yeah.
John, if I can tag on to that, Lanny, oftentimes we're in a new concept for an attraction. We're the first call that somebody with a new idea makes.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting position to be in because, we get some really terrible ideas. And you have to say no, but you have to keep your mind open, because I always say to myself that, listen to this might be the next Walt Disney. You don't know what you're hearing, but then you got to somehow make business sense out of it in my business. So
All right, Lisa, you had, okay, go ahead, Roberta.
Real quickly, I love that quote about imagination and knowledge, because one of our past THEA Award recipients was the Cerritos Library, and you can always Google the Cerritos Library to find out more about it. But that was the entire foundation for the building of that amazing library. It was all about knowledge, but you have to have imagination in order to take you anywhere. So I appreciated so much what Lanny and what Ray said, because Wayne, who was the chief librarian, totally believed in the balance of the two. You need knowledge, but you also need that imagination to take you anywhere. And he brought in Ray Bradbury to help everyone in the Cerritos Library. If you'll remember, we all went to that seminar or that workshop, and Ray talked about both knowledge and imagination. It was an amazing THEA Award recipient.
Excellent. Lisa.
So from Malcolm Darrell to everyone, how should TEA address increasing representation in the industry moving forward?
Oh, who wants to take that one? I'm going to throw that back to Roberta.
Oh, I'm sorry, John. Lisa, what was the question?
It was, how should TEA address increasing representation in the industry moving forward?
Oh, gosh, John, and you're right, and Lisa. We started that way. As a TEA, I first mentioned we like to party, but it was more important than that. We put our little hands into the museum industry and then to the gaming industry. We went out and did that. And then for some reason, we fell back and we didn't do that anymore. We should absolutely have a task force of members who go out to those industries and put the TEA front and center to show everyone that what we can do. We had panels before. We can do that again, and we continue to do it. But there are a lot of industries. In fact, I was just going to bring us into the Space Tourism Society, because there's a way for all of us to be part of space tourism. I know, John, you know how I am. I love to network. Well, we have a member who's a space architect. He wants us to be part of it. So there are many ways to get us out there.
So we only have a few minutes left. So Tracy, if you got real quick though.
Well, okay, just very quickly, the thing I wondered, and it was more just a reflection, is I'm wondering if now that we are getting so used to going to the internet format, if that's not something that will enable a certain kind of reaching out that we couldn't do before, because nobody has to go someplace. You can reach out.
Right.
People can be in their homes. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes things.
All right, I'm going to move it to the last round, Lisa, unless there's anything that's.
Well, I'm just going to read the 4 questions because I think they segue into your last round.
Okay.
So one is to you directly about how do you share your knowledge to the next generation? That's from Raj at Infusion. Kyle Ozier wants to know, how about getting their next job, not their first job, but their next job? And then Clara wants to know, similar to Kyle's question, for those in the midpoint of our careers, what advice do you have for figuring out your 5-year, 10-year rest of career plan or trajectory? Now go to
All right, so
I
let's talk about those questions against the backdrop of what's the future, right? What is the future and how do we see that future for our industry? So I'm kind of looking around here. I think, Ray, I'm going to start with you and talk about what you think from a business paradigm you think it is.
Well, we firmly believe that we're on the we'll be on the road to recovery soon from the pandemic, and getting back to something like normal. And in our industry, certainly looking just at theme parks, we have done some analysis of theme parks. If we try to apply social distancing factors to the design of a park, and I can tell you that's a pretty ugly economic picture. So we want to get back to as close to normal as possible. But we're in the business of making places and experiences and bringing people together. So I think that's just an imperative among people, the social experience. So we see people wanting to get together, go out and enjoy things, and the things that we make in this industry, that they want to rub shoulders with other people, so to speak. And so we think that we'll get back to an industry that looks similar to what it looked like before the pandemic, and sooner rather than later. Although certain parts of the audience that comes to our attractions, the longer distance tourism, those kinds of things will take a little bit longer.
So I'm going to flip to the other extreme. Bonnie, you deal in also theater, right? You also deal with Radio City Music Hall and things of that nature that are different kinds of gathering places. What do you see the future there?
I don't think anything will actually be the same. I think that we as human beings want to be back together desperately, for that networking, for that time, for that, face-to-face experience. I think that we will eventually get everything back, but it'll be different. And I don't have an answer of how it's going to happen, but I believe that this group of people, the creative thinkers, are going to be able to figure it out if we all put our heads together of how it's going to work in the future.
Right.
Absolutely.
So Jim, quick sentence. You deal with placemaking. What do you think the future is with placemaking?
Well, the future, I mean, we deal in architecture, right? And creating the spaces through architecture. And I'm seeing our industry specifically evolve very, very quickly, where we're no longer doing 2D drawings, but all 3D digital models of of the built environment. And the environment is then built from those. So in terms of our industry, I see it changing like that.
So Lanny, really quick. So
Okay.
you talk about technology and how technology is going to help us in the future.
Concrete and steel were primarily our business, and I think it's going to be electronics and computers and human interfaces to AI characters. So that's a long laundry list of new tech, but I believe parks will become more interactive. They will become more intelligent. They will have animatronics that can reach out and touch you. So I see all of that in the future, and it's an exciting one. I think we can still apply the same levels of artistic creativity, but it will be buoyed up by the technology that will support amazing new things.
And do you see that the Disney in particular is dealing with the COVID crisis and planning that into their future?
Without a doubt. We realized that this pandemic is not a once and forever thing.
Mhm.
There will be, now that it's happened, we realize that it can happen again, that some other thing can come about and essentially affect badly our businesses. So we're trying to build back better, to think of why things are so impacted by the pandemic and what we can do about them. Some are actually totally new ideas, which I can't talk about yet, but that will make it so that the parks come a little bit more to you. So anyway, it's both a terrible thing and an opportunity.
So we've run over time, but I just want to go very quickly through each one of you, and each one of you a sentence of what brings you optimism, what brings you hope about the future. So Linda, I'll start with you.
I think it's going to be okay. And I think we have an entire population that is just starved for themed entertainment again. And as soon as it possibly can be done, I think it's going to be okay. You know, classic supply and demand, you know, the demand is definitely there.
Thank you. Ray?
Well, I think age gives perspective. We masters have been around a long time, so we've seen the ups and downs and the cycles play out. I think we see how resilient we as a people are, and so we think that we're heading towards recovery, and we feel confident about that.
Tracy?
Well, I'm very hopeful because first of all, I'm very busy at work. We're doing a lot getting the park ready, our park here at Disneyland Paris, getting it ready to reopen. And I'm in meetings often about the 5-year plan and what we're doing next. And so I think, you know, we're ready to move forward. And so I think that there's good reason to be hopeful. And I also think, just to make a little nod at the environment, which may be our next big challenge, we're also making adjustments to make the park environmentally more friendly, green.
Yeah.
Right. Roberta?
Oh, John, I am so excited about the future because it's a physical and a digital world that we are creating. Our people are the most creative on the planet. I can't wait to see what our members create out there. There are so many opportunities and so many other industries that are needing our assistance and our creativity. So I'm excited because for me, it's the physical world meets the digital world, and I can't wait to see and experience both those worlds.
Jim?
And to build on what Roberta just said, our industry is going to come back. It's going to come back differently. And what I'm excited about is there's a next generation that's really smart and they're ready to embrace change and run with that change. And they're not going to be as resistant to it as maybe some people like me. So I'm excited about the next generation.
I like it. Bonnie?
I think that things will never be the same, but I think that we are so starved for experiences and are connecting with people that we will all put our thinking caps on and come up with a solution and a way to do that safely for the future.
Lanny, you get the last word on this.
I do believe that things will come back. I believe that we're going to build back better. It's becoming sort of the motto of the Walt Disney Company. While we have this downtime, we can rethink diversity. We can rethink the fact that we no longer have to all drive to a building that's 20 miles away to do our thinking, that we can do it at any place. When anything like this happens that takes us down, we can use this time to rethink what we would like to make the world and make it better. So I think we're just going to build back better and everything will be okay.
So
Yeah.
I thank you all. I think we are out of time. Erica, I think we turn this back to you for your wit and wisdom to close us out. But I want to thank all those who participated as well, and welcome and congratulations to the 2020 Masters.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining us to honor these amazing people again. Thank you, Masters. You guys are all wonderful. We're so happy to have you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Lisa. You guys are amazing to work with, and this is always so much fun. I look forward to what we're going to see from all of you as a group as you grow. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. If you have comments or questions, please email us at memberservices@teaconnect.org. Yeah, and we hope to see you all at our next event.
All right. All the best.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody, bye.
Bye, everyone. Congratulations.